There's a little-known part of Hollywood that most people are not aware of, known as the Audience Test Preview. The recently released book, Audienceology, reveals this for the first time. Our podcast series, Don't Kill the Messenger, brings this book to life, taking a peek behind the curtain. And now, join author and entertainment research expert, Kevin Goetz.
I have 2 words to share with you about my guest today. Forward thinking. Well, actually, there's another word, effective. This guy was taking executive AI courses years ago. Bill Block is here with me today, who is a renowned agent, executive, producer, and former studio head. He has produced films including District 9, The Gentleman, Fury, Bad Moms, Old Dads, and this year's Best Picture Oscar nominee, The Holdovers. With extensive experience across multiple platforms, he has a track record of successful turnarounds and, certainly more importantly, profitability, as well as his expertise in navigating truly complex financial deals. Bill, we've been partners, man, for a long time. I am so happy to have you here today.
I am honored and grateful to be part of the Goetz podcast, too.
We are going to go right into it. Born and raised in New York, went to Columbia. You were an American history major, which thrills me because last night at dinner, you said to me, I majored with an emphasis on the Federalist Papers, and I said John Jay, Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, and not a lot of people know that.
Yeah, especially the John Jay part.
So, Bill, listen, you started as an agent, right? Mm-hmm. How did you do that? Because you actually started your own agency in your 30s.
Yeah.
But first you worked for someone?
Yes.
Who did you work for?
Starting in the Irv Schechter agency was actually my first.
Irv Schechter?
Irv Schechter.
Wow.
So, yes.
I remember him.
Yeah, I came out here, actually, answered an ad in the Hollywood Reporter and got a job as a secretary there. The skill then was I could touch type. 60 words. No,
you mean
touch type.
You could, hands on the home keys.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, you had to then.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
So you had that skill?
You had to be a good secretary.
Wow. And I like that you say secretary because a lot of men don't use that word, but that's what you were.
Very much so. And was, speaking American history, a student of Lyndon Johnson who got his start in Congress as a secretary.
He was actually, I think, very underrated when we look at what he really accomplished in his presidency.
Oh, the Carroll books are the best reading in the world, all
Absolutely.
of them.
I love that we share that, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, so you get to the Irv Schechter agency, and then you start your own agency. How do you do that?
Well, you have to become a relatively successful agent first and have a client base.
Did you have clients?
Yes, so I was at ICM at the time and a motion picture literary agent. Sam Raimi, Steve Hopkins, Herbert Ross, very importantly, Walter Parks and Larry Lasker, Neil Israel and Pat Proft were big writers.
Walter Parks?
Walter Parks, yes. So I'd sold War Games, at the time. And so that launched me as an agent.
So you're always a literary agent?
Always a literary agent, but yeah, at the time in 1 year, I'd kind of been behind Police Academy and War Games.
You're that odd kind of combination in a great way of financially responsible and creatively daring. Did you always have that creative bone in your body?
Kevin, it's just reading.
It's not just reading.
It is. Not a lot of people read or like to read or do the reading. I probably took an early good lesson that the way to grow as an agent, to quote Sue Mengers, was to never be somebody's first agent, Bill, she said to me.
Wow.
Yeah, she said, I signed Barbra Streisand in Funny Girl, which says it all. She's a star then Sue Mengers signs her. She didn't discover Barbra Streisand.
So a great story is Tommy Mapother was discovered by one of my best friends in the world, Lorraine Gawley at the time, now Lorraine Rufo. They went to Glenridge High School together in New Jersey. It's Tom Cruise, by the way. But Lorraine was a professional actress already, and she brought Tom to meet her manager, Toby Gibson. I guess Tom was doing Guys and Dolls in the school play. He was on the wrestling team. And she said, Tommy, you should meet my manager. And she got him either Taps or Endless Love, that first role. And then Toby's nephew stole from his aunt, Tom Cruise, and then Paula Wagner came in, and the rest is history. So I understand what you're saying. And Sue Mengers, that was good advice. What was she like, by the way?
A double lesson, a passionate advocate. And for newer entrants like myself in the business who had more of a financing, accounting, legal potentially approach to negotiations, that back end never interested her that much.
So she was just fearless.
Fearless front end.
I'll kill for my clients.
I'll kill for my clients, but a great packager.
Who would you say would be the most significant agents of the last, say, 50 years? Mike Ovitz, Sue Mengers, and...
Jeff Berg.
Jeff Berg, yeah.
Ari.
And now Ari.
Well,
and Brian Lord.
Yes, and Brian Lord.
Right?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I mean, that tree, I mean, you start with Lou Wasserman.
That's right.
So it was a student of his.
Right. That's William Morris.
And people we've forgotten, Ted Ashley, Taft Schreiber, and of course, Sonny Werblin, who ran MCA Television and then became a sports mogul.
Wow. So you came up in that era. So you start your own agency. You need a bunch of chutzpah and maybe money for that. How'd you do it at 30-something?
Well, there was a technological shift at the time. So Mac, the small computer, became available. And it was clear to me then and others, information needed to be gathered at the studio level by 30 or 40 covering agents.
Oh.
And, in talking to my then future partners, David Greenblatt and Judy Huffland, we thought we could do this.
Is that who you started the agency with?
Yes. Yeah.
It was called Intertalent?
Intertalent, yeah.
Wow. And then ICM bought it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. Now, your first foray really into coming on the scene as a businessman was really the acquisition of live entertainment from...
Yes, it was a public company.
Menendez.
Yes. Well, he had passed away. He had been murdered. It was a Roger Burling, kind of a officer in charge of the library asset. It was a public company. It was the video arm of Carolco. And
is that how Live began, as the video arm of Carolco?
It was spun off as a public company.
Mario Casar and Andy Vanya.
Yes.
Now, hold on. I got to ask you this. So you come in with Bain Capital and you form Artisan.
Mm-hmm.
One of your first movies that you take is a movie that even Jason Blum admitted when he was head of acquisitions or worked in acquisitions for Harvey Weinstein, passed on, which was the Blair Witch Project.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you take a risk on it? How did you justify that? And what did you see in that? Because it was this first of its kind in this found footage genre, and it sort of changed the landscape of independent film.
There's a little bit of a history to those kind of passes. You're reminding me, the Paul Hogan smash hit, Crocodile Dundee, was passed on by everybody. Because what happens is you're seeing the opportunity alone, either on a video cassette. The studio executives are looking at Crocodile Dundee, two of them, at the time alone while they're doing other things. There's no audience. I had the good fortune, I had not seen Blair Witch. So everybody had seen it before it had been leaked. And just before I passed it, wasn't it? So the attendance at the midnight screening...
Where was it, at Sundance?
At Sundance. Was minimal. Decisions had already been made. And so to then see it with that audience, with John Hegman right next to me, we looked at each other about 20 minutes in. I think I had the notes someplace and said, isn't this good?
Wow.
We went outside... And then one other buyer walked out. It was a lengthy start. Two others were passing in the lobby. And we looked at each other, and Phil Raskin, who was the agent, was walking out, head down a little bit on the street, no auction. And we went up to him and said, we like this.
My Lord.
We want to make a deal. We want to make a deal now.
What'd you pay for it?
$1 million for the world.
And kickers, bonuses?
Yes, they had a fair back end.
So they had it.
Oh, yes.
So they made out.
Yes, they did. They're very important to me about artist accounting.
The people that are fair in this business, I find, last the longest and are the most liked, clearly, because they play by the rules,
Do you know what the secret to studio Hollywood accounting is? never recognize a revenue, always recognize an expense.
Yeah, I know. That's not good.
No.
Well, it's good for the studios.
Good for the studio to hold on to the cash and, yes, delay payment.
What was the ultimate gross of that franchise?
Several hundred million.
Oh, so, my Lord. From a conversation walking on the main street of Sundance and saying, we want to do a deal now. Here's $1 million world.
Yeah.
What happened to Artisan again?
It had an interesting exit opportunity. So Blair Witch Project opens in July 1999 against the Julia Roberts-Richard Gere picture.
Runaway Bride?
Yes, I think so. And with a P&A spend of about $4 million. And does. Don't forget, when I got to Saturday morning, they said, okay, it did 10. I said, okay, not a bad weekend. No, it did 10 Friday night. So it did.
More than that? Did it beat out?
So it did close to this. It did 25 plus. And so the revolutionary aftermath was, and this is where John Hageman deserves enormous credit. Well, we don't need to do television buying. The internet is now going to change everything. And Artisan's at the forefront of it, too.
Wow.
So an internet campaign can open a picture.
And John always was really visionary in that respect.
Visionary and ahead of the curve on that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And he got a lot of shit for it, too, by the way, in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
And
he opened that movie with less than $5 million to a mid-20s gross. Aberrational.
Well, but I just want to say for those listening, in my company, there are 5 movies that no one is allowed to mention when we talk about comps. And the Blair Witch Project is one of them. Paranormal Activity is another. They defied what the research said.
Yeah.
And so everyone likes to pull those out.
Right.
I even said Straight Outta Compton because it was not expected to cross over to the general population like it did.
Donna Langley daring. Just
so talented.
Yes.
Wonderful executive. But there's a couple of others. My Big Fat Greek Wedding is another one.
I've got another thing, Blair Witch, interesting anti-research story, too, that taught me a great lesson.
What was that?
We did the first research screening in Long Island, and it goes badly. 30 walkouts.
Wow.
Now, you know how unusual that is.
Oh, very.
Very bad. One of the people involved in it very much against the acquisition of it, just rubbing their hands in glee. And so what I have to do is take this research to heart, which is the audience wants an explanatory ending. I gather the filmmakers say, we have to reshoot this ending.
Wow.
You've got to say what the heck happened here. They can't end up levitating in a corner.
And we did that in Paranormal Activity, by the way, as well.
We reshoot it, and Eduardo and the 2 filmmakers, you're making a mistake, Bill. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. We're doing it. Reshoot it, write it. We reshoot it, we retest it, and it does better with an explanatory
No walkouts.
No walkouts, better with an explanatory ending. And then they go to the mat with me. You're really making a mistake. You're really
After seeing the better test?
Yes, you're really making a mistake here. And they were so vociferous, and I kind of could not convince them after 3 days. And because the financial stakes were low, too, I did not want to go this early on Artisan against filmmakers like this in post, which was somebody else in the independent world named H.W., who was notorious for
Harvey Scissorhands.
For post-production directives. They were completely right. And Hageman actually deserves great credit because he put that positioning card at the top. So he put that in, which helped, explain, I forget what it was, something like this. You're making me think of something 25 years ago, but that was him. The ending worked. They bought it. The rest is history.
Now, do you regret it?
No, they were right. The filmmakers were right. But back to this, that's really aberrational, too.
Well, hold on. Listeners, please know that there's a dance that almost all of my guests, if not every one of them, have done with the audience. Bill Block has been a tremendous advocate of the audience. He has listened to them, he honors them, and he truly will not do a project or won't defer to a filmmaker if the audience at large is saying something to the contrary. And I say this to so many of you and out there regularly, which is, avoid the audience at your own peril. And you really do understand and appreciate research. Let's talk about a couple of things in our life together where you have used research in a way that really benefited the property or gave you the confidence in the green light. Can you give me
Well, Halloween was huge, and that's you.
Thank you.
I've always given you great guidance credit for that.
Let's talk about that.
All right, so I get the job at Miramax, and the first possible project sitting there is, well, what should we do with Halloween? And I talked to you about it, and it's been done 14 times. And
was it truly 14 times?
14 times. And Bob Weinstein had taken it to the depths of direct-to-video. Can you even do anything? And Jason had developed it.
Jason Blum, yep.
And then we kind of went to you, and you should fill this in here, because the decision was, Kevin, should we do this or not? Because it would be my first green light.
And I had run research for you on what we call a capability test.
And the Jamie Lee Curtis data came up.
Well,
where did that come up?
It came up in that test. I ran it with and without Jamie Lee Curtis. And I think it was David Gordon Green as director. There were other elements that were already attached to it. I absolutely said this movie should be made. On a Sunday morning, the phone rings and it's Jason Blum and Charles and maybe Cooper. And they said, hold on, we want to get Bill Block on the line as well. And we got Bill Block on the line. So now we've got a three-way conversation going. And we need to make a decision on Jamie Lee right now. I think she wanted several $1 million. And I said, pay the lady.
Indeed. And you were quite correct.
I said, pay the lady, because Jamie Lee's involvement in that project was the key to bringing it back to what really elevated the property then. And there was no question in my mind. The research was that clear. And even when you say that with the research being clear, you're putting yourself on the line, and there's financial, and it worked out, I imagine, quite well.
Oh my God.
I know she made a good deal for herself.
But no, 3 terrific, huge hits.
And she's extraordinary in it, and you reinvented a franchise. Yeah. So kudos to all of you. Yeah. But you used research.
Well, kudos
in a
to
great
Jason and her and Cooper. Those guys really ran it, and David Gordon Green, they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it was a wonderful partnership.
Yeah.
And now, cut to another movie that I know you used research on in a very positive way was Fury with Brad Pitt, because it was a movie you were not sure about making, if I recall, right?
Well, I'm always artist focused. So when I first had the conversation with David Ayer, who I'd been pursuing to get in business with, at a party, I said, what do you really, really want to do? I'll do that. Because he was so sought after for assignments. And he said, well, what I really want to do is a World War II tank movie. And I'm saying to myself, well, I have no idea. And I look at him and say, well, that's brilliant. We're doing it. You have to listen to the artist.
Absolutely. That's why I say the creative is so, you don't just read books. You have tremendous EQ, and you really understand and appreciate not only the audience, but the artistry of the filmmaking as well.
The writer-director.
But Bill, that's where the beauty of your talents really blossoms, is that you do have both parts of those brains. Very unusual.
Well, I don't know. Thank you. But then he did it. He spec'd it. And he gave it to me first. It was a perfect script. I was going to make it 104 pages. There wasn't a change to be made. He wrote a brilliant shooting draft.
And he was directing it.
He was directing it. I bought it that day after I finished reading it. And then the rest came together.
Well, so we did a test on it.
Yeah.
And it came back really strong in 2 of the 4 quadrants. Males under 25 or 30, I forgot how we broke it then, and males over 25 and 30, but females were not on board with it, either of them. And actually, that's what drove the movie. The male audience really drove that movie. Yeah. And it makes intuitive sense when you talk about a World War II tank movie. I thought the movie was terrific. Yeah. I really did. Yes. But women ultimately came with men because it became a compromise movie. But if you didn't have those 2 quadrants as strongly as you did, I might have given you a different sort of interpretation or advice.
Do you too? Because these are the fights one, has gentle fights about, but they're not winnable. So you don't.
I've taken you on a couple of times.
I'm talking about. So Brad dies in the end.
Yeah. Spoiler.
Yes.
Well, I should have said that before.
Yes. We never quite like that. We don't like Brad Pitt dying in the end of the movie. However, it is congruent. It is sacrificial.
It's the right ending.
It is the right ending.
Yeah,
yes.
No, totally. Yeah. Let's go to more recently, the Miramax days. You had an incredible, as you said, run, but opportunity to do so many things. And one of the things I know you're most proud of is The Holdovers, which I got to work on and to test. I just think Alexander Payne is a genius. He's such a talented filmmaker. Yeah. And I remember coming out into the lobby and you're looking at me.
Yes.
And I think I just gave you a thumbs up and I said, wow. And that's the genius of what I get to do, where I see movies.
That it was theatrical.
I absolutely thought so, even though it was.
That was the stomach and the throat, yes.
But it's an Alexander Payne movie who has such a clear vision, such beauty in his filmmaking. And I think I've worked on every one of his movies.
It's quite in-depth and emotionally nuanced.
Why did you say yes to it? Was it because of Alexander?
That was a yes the minute I put it down, wow. The minute I finished it. I went to a boarding school like that. And so it struck a number of personal chords. And it was brilliant. And it was him.
Wow.
And I credit Rogue and CAA for making it happen for us, because several of the studios wanted it.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk to Bill about some future projects. There's two in particular that I want to bring up. We'll be back in a moment.
Get a glimpse into a secret part of Hollywood that few are aware of and that filmmakers rarely talk about. In the new book, Audienceology by Kevin Goetz. Each chapter is filled with never-before-revealed inside stories and interviews from famous studio chiefs, directors, producers, and movie stars, bringing the art and science of audienceology into focus. Audienceology, how moviegoers shape the films we love. From Tiller Press at Simon & Schuster. Available now.
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. You've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
We're back with Bill Block. Bill, thank you again for sharing so much of your past with me and our listeners. I always like to look at the future and towards the future, and you have a couple of things that are coming out. One of them is a project called Here, directed by Bob Zemeckis, starring Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, correct?
Correct.
It is a truly unique idea, but also way of shooting.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Well, it's shot in a locked-off camera. One camera, no movement, in one set.
Oh, my Lord.
So that was the pushback against it, that there wouldn't be close-ups. There wouldn't be camera movement in it. How would this play?
It's total trust in Bob Zemeckis, right?
Yes, but that trust is ratified by Bob in a simple conversation with him that few had, where he explained the movement, the mise-en-scene, the dissolves and visual effects and time shifts.
It starts like in the prehistoric age.
It does.
And it goes all the way up to today.
Yes, and the future. So,
I mean, what a crazy cool concept.
The bottom line is, you see the movie, you don't even think about it.
Oh, my Lord. Was it hard to finance that movie?
It was a controversial green light. It was because
Of that convention?
Well, everybody had passed.
Wow. Let me ask you this. What was the most tough financial package that you've ever put together? Challenging to get the parts working, the inter-party agreements, the international piecing together.
Oliver Stone's W.
Oh, that was you.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Too controversial?
It was coming up in the election year. Oliver had a balanced view of George W. I mean, he'd gone to school with him. He knew him.
So
but that was a stretch because he's a brilliant filmmaker. By the way, I call him Roger Clemens. I've never seen anybody operate quite like him. He threw a no-hitter. He started the picture in April and delivered it before the election and just was flawless in terms of his shooting and post.
What was one of your easier financing deals to put together?
A Jason Statham action picture is just something
when
that
he plays in his wheelhouse.
Yes,
he's
great demand for it. Great demand for it internationally and domestically.
And then I know Bad Moms was a bit of a difficult project. It seems so easy. I thought you were going to say Bad Moms at first.
Yeah,
but it was not that easy to put together. Tell us about that.
I was fortunate to option and get the script, myself, and begin packaging it at QED, but no distributor wanted it.
Such a cool concept.
Except I know everybody passed.
Just the name alone, right?
Well, I have a theory about that. It's executive subjectivity. You're at a studio. I didn't develop it. This is a financed movie. I'm picking it up. I don't want to give it distribution. So if you go in the front door through production,
so did you package it before STX picked it up?
Yes, I had an original package, putting it together with a well-known producer and star, and that fell apart. And then it was back to ground zero. The female actresses, 6 all passed who were of age, and somebody who was perhaps too young to play a mother at the time, Mila Kunis, was brilliantly perfect for it.
She is so good.
She's so good.
You ever see Friends with Benefits?
Yes.
Man.
God, no.
She's good.
She's a talent.
She's in a movie right now that is looking for distribution. By the time this airs, it probably will have found it. And it was directed by Nancy Meyer's daughter. And it is a beautiful film starring Michael Keaton and Mila Kunis about a father who has a second family now and is disengaged from his first family, and his wife leaves him, and he is now thrust in having to take care of 2 little children. And Mila plays his daughter from the first marriage. And it's so meaningful. I cried at the end.
And no distribution. Here's what happens. They're going to watch on a link and not make a decision. You have to see it with an audience to know. It's really interesting, that lacuna of avoiding that. I don't get it. We've done this each time. What did you do? You did something for me. I remember down the Soho screening room, which, in New York. What picture was it? One of our...
John Turturro, maybe?
Yes, Fading Gigolo. Especially you're entering post.
That was the Crosby Street.
Yes, the Crosby Street Theater. What do they think? And you were always so good. First, we're going to the core, Bill. Let's see, does it work for the core?
That's right.
So we'll take it to the Crosby Street Theater. This is where it's got to work. If it doesn't work here.
If it doesn't work here, we're fucked, essentially.
Yes.
And also, that's right. From there, let's cut it for the core. So this is a lesson in terms of screenings in general. If you have a movie that is playing really well with a secondary or tertiary audience, but intuitively what your core is, you want to then make changes to try to get your core on board. But if you have secondary and tertiary audiences who are not scoring it as well as your core, you want to be careful to not take away from your core.
But take me out of the Myers picture. It fascinates me. So here you've got a wonderful completed picture. You've tested it, I presume. I won't ask to.
I personally didn't test it, but it was tested, and it tested extraordinarily high.
So how does this, the problem that's contracted you as...
I don't know the answer to that. And I think it's what you said. When you yourself, let's talk candidly here about old dads.
Yes.
I mean, old dads, which thank God Netflix stepped in and did it. But at first they didn't step in. You had to sort of go back to them a couple of times.
No, Ari Emanuel had to go back to them.
Wow. Well, tell us about that, because, again, a terrific picture starring.
And it tested to a theatrical level, basically,
100%.
And we couldn't get...
Starring comedian Bill Burr. Bill Burr has a huge following and fills arenas around the country. And that, when I heard that information from you, I started to dig further and do more research to find out, wow, he's really big in these red states and middle of the country.
And by the way, they're paying $75 for those concerts. 60,000 sold out. So I did that data run. It didn't make sense. 1 million people paid $75. Don't you think maybe more than that, or half of them will pay $7.50 or $10?
You wanted originally, I know, to go theatrical, and I was on the fence with that.
Every streamer passed.
No, because then you're talking about having to invest another, 15, 20, 25, $30 million.
Which you get back first plus a distribution fee.
Well, if the movie does well
gets
enough.
past $15.
Exactly. But I wasn't sure about that at the moment. So I definitely could not understand how a streamer wouldn't take it, which again harkens back to the Myers picture. It was more of a streamer. Why would a streamer not take that? It was as good as so many movies that I work on. I get to work on so many of the streaming movies. That's where it gets confusing for me, because it's gotten so hard for people to make independent films and then get them sold.
Yes.
Have you found a sea change, or have you found any change since, let's say, QED to leaving Miramax? So we're talking about a span of 10 years at least, right? In that, what did you see in that 10 years change in the acquisition market?
Well, you had to reach the apex of content making during COVID and streaming flips, where there was demand from the streamers for ready-to-go made content by third parties. The Netflix Q1 22 earnings miss was the real sea change, because that was
we can't recklessly spend.
And subscriber growth had reached its peak and was declining. So the total addressable market was kind of fulfilled. Also, they built up internally.
I would say it was growing less.
Growing less.
Because it was still growing, and yet also there was...
They reported that was the first decline.
That was also before they did the password
protections or go after it and ad-supported.
But you're right. It was definitely a tipping point in the American market. Yeah,
Apple, Amazon, these are global acquisitions too, and Netflix.
You have to sell worldwide.
Very rare that you divide it.
Right.
It happens, but rare.
But that was also in the early days, and then all the streamers want.
And then they have their own internal production development departments. They're spending $10+ billion in content internally, so they're not looking to reward a third-party license. Hence, and they have to pay that plus cost plus. So they're paying the negative cost too. Your better shot, and the real acquisition shot, is theatrical. That is what is left, actually.
Wow.
The international market is there for it, and the profitability is there.
Well, there's no question about it. I know Tom Rothman has said this repeatedly to me, which is you create a zeitgeist effect when you go theatrical, because you're spending money essentially, at the very least, making people aware of something in a very big way in a very short time. And so that makes your property, whatever it is, more valuable, or certainly more people are more aware of it.
The next window, the pay one window now, which is down from, exhibition to hold on to 90 days for so long, too.
Yeah, I was with one of the heads of AMC Theaters yesterday for coffee, and I said, windowing is going to change, but also, are you guys going to be getting in, like they did with the Taylor Swift movie, into the production business more? There's always been this wall between distribution and exhibition. And I said, the wall really doesn't need to exist
anymore. There's no Justice
anymore.
Department pushback on that anymore.
I don't think
that would be.
Well, that's for sure. But I was just saying, even this understanding between that's your space, this is our space, we don't cross spaces. But the world is so complicated now and difficult. All right, so how would you put a movie like Fury, the one with David Ayers, together? Like, so you hear something that you know is innately really difficult. Did you have Brad Pitt at the time?
No.
So you knew you'd had to get Brad Pitt.
But that script was so brilliant.
Yeah, but
it was going to
buyers are going to buy a brilliant script?
No, you package it first, so you get Brad first.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If you didn't have Brad, would you have been able to put that together?
Yes, because I think you would have had 4 other of the top leading men.
But I'm saying you had to have a piece of talent.
Oh, yes, you
that.
did. Yes, you did.
You would never go out to the market without a piece of talent attached to it.
Correct.
So what else do you have coming out?
So you have the Beekeeper sequel in development. That'll be hopefully next year. But here is the big one.
And tell us about your TV show from The Gentleman.
8-episode series, which they will be renewing. And that's Guy Ritchie and Guy Ritchie's World. And Mark Helwig, who is the head of television.
You're an executive producer on that?
Yes. And Mark is the head of television at the Miramax, who really guided, sold, and developed and supervised this too.
So we can exploit your brain here, your finance brain. A lot of young filmmakers listen to the podcast, and I would love to give them a sense of, if they have something today, what is the path forward? And I know the answer is, it depends on the project as a first step, but what is the typical trajectory if you have something that has teeth that you think could be theatrical? Where do you go?
You go to, someone like myself or Jonathan Groffman at MRC. I think he's doing a brilliant job. Or A24, because theatrical has to be, you said it last night, it's got to be excellent. You were saying to somebody who's going, why didn't my movie test well? I guess you didn't say them, because it wasn't very good.
I wouldn't even say that. It wasn't good enough. Because the bar has gotten higher and higher than it's ever been. But I do want to go back, though, Bill, to...
So how does somebody do it?
Yeah, how does someone do it?
You look at a financing equation is, what are your international pre-sales estimate? What is your tax credit estimate? What then is the remaining equity needed to hit your budget? And
who pays for that?
And who pays, that last
that
budget.
Mezzanine.
Well, I'll call it that gap.
Is it mezzanine funding, that gap?
It's equity. It's equity.
So who does that middle equity gap?
Third-party equity financiers,
That's
or somebody.
Probably the more riskier of the.
It is, because that is
money.
dependent on box office results if it's theatrical, or it's dependent on a streamer flip to get its money back and its return.
Is there a world now where you enter a project and you're completely covered? I mean, to me, that's the best solution, would be selling.
Rare. You could do it, but the stars who can do that, they're very well represented. They're very well aware of that. They're not going to allow you to.
That's a very interesting fact.
Yeah.
So clearly a listener might say,
yeah.
Well, if I just go sell France, England, Japan, Cornerstone, Germany, and I get 40% of my budget covered, why don't you just go to the rest of the world and leave the U.S. open? And the answer is because the agents, if you have a big piece of talent, won't allow it because they know that, or they'll want a piece of that.
Or, more money in it. So
American sale, right?
Yes.
Or U.S. Canada sale.
Correct. And their fees, and deservedly so. You can't arbitrage completely a risk-free movie, although I have one good story about it.
I was going to say, unless
there's only one done.
I want to hear that story.
A risk-free arbitrage, which is all debt. By the way, I've tried to convince talent over that of the years, too. Okay, here's somebody so smart. Cameron Diaz, Bad Teachers.
She made a fortune on that movie.
Because she did it for scale. Todd Phillips on Hangover.
Wow.
And on Joker. You're taking no fee, and you're saying, okay, Mr. Studio Head Bill, I want a first dollar back end. I'm not taking my $10 million. I'll bet on myself and the ups.
Wow.
Wow, very few do that.
Why don't they?
Well, I'm going to tell you. So I was involved with some big stars. So I sat down with some big stars and have shown the model. Here, if we do this all debt, now you own 100% of the back end. There's no equity. We're borrowing against pre-sales and a tax credit. You subordinate your fee into this structure. Now, this is a person who gets paid to start 10 to 20 million and kind of look at you and say, I know, I see that. I see if I hit this box, I'd make 30 to 50. I want my 20. I want my 20 now.
And then it's against.
Well, then it's it. You rarely see that back end. Yes.
There's a few of them. Right?
Few. You take an outsized hit.
Yeah, I never understood why.
That's why they're paid.
Yeah,
it's easier too. I'm paid 15. I don't want to risk that to maybe make nothing or make 30.
Right. You got to really believe in something.
Yes.
Right.
Too. So you rarely see it happen.
And I love that accounting because that's, if you're talking about first dollar
it's
gross,
easy. Yes.
It's so easy.
Well, look at Todd. I mean, I just admire his acumen, his testicles, all of it.
I admire his testicles.
I mean,
the size of his testicles.
Yes.
He's wonderful.
I mean, look at Joker. Yeah. Oh, my God.
Oh,
I mean, and so this is exactly the kind of, you test that. It's dark. It's tough. It is the New York I grew up in. This was the New York of the 70s. I mean, my God, it's like Taxi Driver.
It really mean streets, yeah.
And what an ending.
Don't tell us.
Okay, but
we already gave one spoiler in this.
All right, it's just like, find a partner. Studio says, get in Braun. We need a partner too. Don't you love those stories?
The way I characterized you and I introduced you was as forward thinking and effective, but forward thinking brings me to AI. And I can't help thinking about AI. What do you think, as we sort of end our conversation today, what do you think is the AI world in 5 years? How does it affect our business?
I think it's less than 5 years. I think it's 2 to 3 years.
And what is it? What happens?
A complete reduction in costs. So the image generating capability of text to image generation now is going to take a action picture, and this is going to be interesting for stars. I've talked to Jason about it a little bit. You're taking a $70 million Jason Statham picture that I project could do for maybe 7 to 10, within that time span, because all the stunts and all the action should be, and you're going to see it in here, by Metaphysic this fall, generated the image generation at that cost where the star will only have to work for a week. The movie will get done in 2 weeks.
Oh, my Lord.
So you're going to...
They can almost do it in a room like this, is what you're saying.
Yes, you're going to see that quicker. What's going to be also interesting, too, the Netflix, the TikToks that ascertain audience demand now and fulfill content off that, this instant image generating capability, you're going to say, well, in a way, here's what I want. And you're going to make it for me now. You're going to see, so production costs come down, script costs come down, first drafts are generated in days to then get to work on.
I was just going to ask you would you buy a script that was completely written by AI?
Well, it's called passing the Turing test. And I believe now that an AI script would pass the Turing test, meaning the audience wouldn't know the difference.
Especially for programmers.
Yes, especially for programmers.
On those networks that do one type of genre picture.
Right, yeah.
Wow. I mean, I will refuse to believe that artistry, and I know you share this, artistry and
originality,
nuance, originality,
it's voice.
But I think what you say is it's about speeding up the process. And maybe if you have a problem that you can't solve in a particular area of a script, if you fed it with training data that was able to fix that,
this is the fascinating thing. It's a voice.
Amazing.
You can feed it the training data. Give me Hemingway's voice.
Oh my God, it's so frightening.
Yes.
Oh my God. I have to do a show or two on that. I'm going to think about how to get those right guests in here who can speak about what is actually, as you said, what's actually possible right now. Because I think it's important for us to, to go there, even though it's a scary prospect. But
we should get Bob and Derek Hogue. I'm telling you here, so here I'll leave you with this, is you are taking the, and this is what you need, the LLM of Robin Wright and Tom Hanks' historical performances, too. So they have that visual data from 30 plus years. The software is in camera and maps emotionally them as teenagers to their performance now, too. So
wow,
it is frightening in a way. I think we'll be seeing some deep fake stuff this election year, too.
Oh, yeah, the deep fake stuff. Wow. Bill Block, you're just one of my favorite people.
And you too, sir. Love you. Thank you.
I love you very much, and you're a terrific man. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview. I encourage you to check out many of Bill's films, including The Beekeeper, The Holdovers, and later this year, the film Here, directed by Robert Zemeckis. For more filmmaking and audience testing stories, I invite you to check out my book, Audienceology, or through my website at kevingetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media at kevingetz360. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.